Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 58 of That Gives Me Anxiety. How have you been? I haven't talked to you in a while. I recorded the last 3 episode intros before I went to New York. I don't know why my eyes look like they're bugging out of their head. I'm just excited to chat while in my office alone. But I did try to put on a nice shirt. I mean, I didn't try. I was successful in that. There's not like someone playing defense on me wearing a nice shirt. How was your holiday? Mine was great. Jamie and I visited my family up in New York, played a bunch of ping pong, went into Manhattan. Haven't really had a chance to have some fun around there since, the pandemic, when we still lived there. Went to a restaurant called 53. If you live there, Mary Alice, who's been on the show a bunch, works at this place called 53. It's easy. The address is 53 West 53rd. I'm giving you advice and then I mess with my nose like that, destroying my credibility. But yeah, it was great to see family. Great Christmas. Very relaxed New Year's. We're back here for New Year's. Relaxed. Just wanted the ball to drop so I can go to sleep. At that point in my life. Also highlighted by the fact that my favorite Christmas gift was a remote control bidet. I'm telling you, fantastic. Heated seats. Has a drying aspect. Air freshener. It's like something you'd see on the Jetsons and never believed that it would exist, but now it does. Phenomenal. Well, I'm so excited that vacation's behind us, back to work. Back to the intros being more timely. And guess what? We've got a great episode lined up for you. I can't even take the credit when it's my own podcast. I have to deflect and make it a team game. Today's episode is the full interview I did with Silke Herwald. It's on the fear of failure and what we can do to overcome that. Silke is a therapist down in Australia. And we had a lovely chat. But before we get to Silke, I just want to remind you, if you're liking the show, to please remember to rate and review it. Hopefully positively. That helps boost the show in all the algorithms. It's very helpful. You can check the show out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you're liking the show and you want to make a donation to help support me, you can do that by clicking the link, the Buy Me a Coffee link, and donate whatever you're comfortable with. That always helps me keep making these. So thank you to everyone that has donated in that way. Also, I've got a new partner. I've sort of hinted at it or directly mentioned them. Pure Spectrum CBD. I've been taking their 25 milligram vegan gummies. First of all, delicious taste. And I've been reading about how CBD is helpful with inflammation, which is very helpful for the arthritis in my back. Asleep on the couch at midnight on New Year's, bidet for Christmas, back arthritis. But people take CBD for a whole bunch of reasons. I've definitely taken CBD on and off to help with anxiety, and I'm a big fan of it. But yeah, definitely check that out. I've also been using their... It's a lavender salve. It's kind of like it's called Relax, and it does exactly that. It's kind of like just like a soothing ointment you can put on your muscles, or if you want to go to sleep and smell lavender. I mean, it smells phenomenal. Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, so definitely check them out. Pure Spectrum CBD with the promo code AnxietyPod. You'll get 15% off all your orders. So yeah, supporting them helps support me as well. Well, as always, thank you so much for listening, and enjoy my chat with Silke. Joining me now on That Gives Me Anxiety, I have Silke Herwald, who is a therapist and also somewhat of a recurring guest, where Silke appeared on Death Space Filling the Void to talk about her work with people who are grieving. Silke, pleasure to talk to you again.
Yeah, so excited to be back. Thank you. I've been so looking forward to this. Thanks for having me again, Pat.
I'm such a thrill to have you. Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. We're going to be talking about a fear of failure today, but why don't we start by you introducing yourself to everybody?
Yeah, great. So my name is Silke Herwald. I'm in Australia on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and I have been helping people with anxiety and grief and trauma for, I think, over 12 years by now. I also am a master hypnotherapist and master practitioner of NLP, and also a supervisor for the Australian Hypnotherapist Association and the Society of Clinical Hypnotherapists as well. And yeah, I work with people from actually all over the world. So I do a lot of Zoom sessions. Currently, I've got a couple of people in the US, somebody in Sweden, somebody in the UK. It really helps with working with all sorts of fears and anxieties.
That's really cool that you get to work with people from all over the world. Probably, I mean, is there something that's common among everybody? I'm sure, it's kind of, we're all human beings, but I'm wondering if there's something that's been interesting in terms of what the anxiety is like across the world.
Yeah, so absolutely. There are some very common patterns in it every single time. And that really is that in actual fact, we weren't actually born with a fear of failure. We just learned that at some stage. Because if we were born with an inherent fear of failure, we would have never learned to walk. Well, of course, the kid just kind of crawls around and eventually sees somebody else walking and goes, that seems like a better option. And then they start pulling themselves up on stuff. And it doesn't matter how many times that kid fails per day, how many times they fail at this goal of wanting to walk per hour or per minute, they just keep at it. They keep at it. And then they have a snooze because they're exhausted from getting up all the time. And then they go for it again. So in actual fact, we were all not born with this. This has all been learned. And I think that is always really important to understand. Because once we get that there's something that we have learned, there are also other things that we have learned, but we don't do anymore, like skip and rope or doing the hula hoop or whatever. We've learned that at some stage, but you know what? We just don't do it anymore. And in my experience, people always say, I have anxiety or I am just an anxious person. But I don't actually think that is entirely accurate, because anxiety is actually something that you do. Because even the most anxious person, if they were an anxious person, they would have to be doing anxiety 24/7 all the time. But of course, the moment where somebody tells them a stupid joke and they're laughing wholeheartedly, even if it's just for a second, but at that moment in time, they're not doing anxiety. At that moment in time, they're engaged in a different behavior, which is laughing. So in actual fact, anxiety is a response to certain triggers. And it is a behavior that is very much driven by subconscious processes in a desire to keep the person safe. All anxieties and fears have been learned at some stage. And because the job of the unconscious is to keep the person safe. And the unconscious does it in the best way it has learned up until this moment in time how to do. So, and it always does that based on past experiences. So for example, when we got little Johnny playing in the sandpit, and then the playground bully comes along, nicks the shovel off little Johnny and whacks him over the head with it. Now, little Johnny wants to give this situation meaning. And of course, because the idea of the unconscious is, if I give this the right meaning, then I can prevent that from happening again in the future, and I will be safer. Now, of course, Johnny has got about 1 million different ways on how he could interpret that. He could say, aha, it happened in the sandpit. So obviously playing in sandpits is inherently dangerous because that's where you get whacked over the head. Or he could say, aha, the kid who whacked me over the head was wearing a red t-shirt. So obviously people who wear red t-shirts are inherently dangerous, and I better be afraid of them from now on.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe for the first time, he became aware that he had sand between his toes when he got whacked over the head, and there just happened to be happening at the same time. So now he kind of goes, aha, sand between your toes is dangerous because that's when you get whacked over the head.
Oh my goodness. There's so many ways for it to go south.
It's so simple, right? So, and of course, then, I mean, yeah, there's lots of stuff that we can do as the grown-ups to kind of prevent those ideas from forming. But of course, it very much depends on that situation. For example, when a kid is, let's say, at the beach and a dog comes running towards the kid, it might even be a happy dog, but they're usually kind of like at eye level with a toddler.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, if a horse came running full tilt at me, I would kind of be a little bit worried about that too.
Certainly. Yeah, they're big.
Yeah? So, and of course, at first, the kid might kind of go, whoa, that was not cool. And at first, then the unconscious kind of goes, okay, that situation was not cool. But it's probably safer if from now on, we're afraid of all dogs that kind of look like that one. So at first, they might just be afraid of, I don't know, black dogs with a short fur, because that was what happened. Right. And then kind of go, well, actually, they are black dogs with a long coat. Better be afraid of them too.
Sure, just to be safe.
There are dogs that are black with like brown in it. Better be afraid of. Well, and then eventually it just kind of goes into, oh, better be afraid of all of that. Mm-hmm. And of course, that is very much the premise that we learn with regards to all anxieties and all fears. And the fear of failure really is no different. That also is a learned response. It's just learned through doing something and then, for example, being told off for it. Schools have a lot to answer for.
Yeah, that's true for a lot of reasons and a lot of things. Yeah. Fear of failure is such a grand topic in that it could be you're afraid to try a new activity or try a new business venture. It's such a spectrum of how it could be affecting people. So when people come to you, how often is it on the bigger side versus the smaller side? Or I feel like based on what you just said, it just starts to seep into everything that I can't juggle, so then I can't start this restaurant that I wanted to start, right? Like how does it normally present itself in people you work with?
So very often the person I will be working with, they might not actually even be aware of a fear of failure. They just kind of go, oh, I feel like I'm stuck with my business venture. I just can't seem to move forward with it. I've got these great ideas, but I just kind of, for 3 months now, I've been designing my logo on my business cards. Feel like doing something, but not actually doing anything.
Right. Check the box. I worked on it. Yeah.
Right. Kind of make me feel better, but I'm not actually getting anywhere. Or they might kind of come to me and say, oh, I just really can't cope when my boss criticizes my work. Mm-hmm. Or there's something where they kind of go, oh, when such and such happens, I just completely freak out and I kind of start shaking. Some people, they actually kind of go, okay, I think this is a fear of failure. Mm-hmm. But of course, also the fear of failure is quite a broad topic, because why are we actually afraid of failure? And then it kind of then we kind of start digging in a bit deeper. And it might be that the person is actually afraid of other people making fun of them. Or they might actually be afraid of losing a lot of money. Or they might be afraid of other people kind of saying, oh, I told you so, or whatever. So it often is actually more a perceived threat to the ego. It often also is driven by underlying beliefs about oneself. The belief of, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of this, I'm not intelligent, smart, clever, whatever enough, fill in the blank, really. And all of that very much drive also that fear of failure. So it's important to kind of dig into what is actually underneath that as well.
Right. I mean, it's astonishing. The reason why I wanted to do this episode, or that the idea came from, I read a study that the number one fear based on Google searches in the United States, far and away, was fear of failure. Like people were Googling, how do I fix my fear of failure? And so it I don't think the United States is any different than anywhere else in the world. So I imagine it's exists everywhere, right? But that's an astonishing amount of people
It is.
that are afraid to mess up. Why do you think that is? Does it just go back to our childhood and a time that we messed up?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
all learned, because as kids, we take everything personally. Because the only reason why we believe in Santa Claus is because the grown-ups tell us.
Right.
And there is a huge reward for believing in Santa Claus.
Sure,
it's called Christmas.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then of course, and it is so easy. And even though it is so incredibly obvious, the kids still believe in Santa Claus.
You kind of want to, right? Yeah.
You kind of want to, because there's a huge reward for believing in it.
Yeah.
And of course, then also all other beliefs are formed in the same way. Because then to the child, the whole world evolves around the child. Because kids just don't get humor up until a certain age. They don't get humor, they don't get sarcasm, right? They just kind of take everything incredibly literally.
Yeah.
So then imagine, I don't know, a teacher or a neighbor or even their own parent kind of going, oh, really? You know, the kid is trying to help or whatever. And they, of course, they don't do it perfectly. And then mum is at the end of her tether and just kind of goes, oh, you spilt the milk. Oh, right. Why did you do that? Man, you should have been more careful. Yeah. So, and then that is learned. So it's plus, of course, also our entire system is built in a way. I don't know how it is these days. I haven't attended school in a very, very long time. I hope things are changing. But back in my day, certainly, you were only got rewarded for doing the right thing. You got bad marks for failing, really. Yeah. You got good marks for doing well. Nobody rewarded effort. Back in my day, I remember like clearly, I had some kids in my class. I'm sure today they would have been diagnosed with ADHD, and another kid who definitely would have been diagnosed with autism. But back in those days, that just didn't exist.
Right. But
he just was made to feel stupid and like a failure every single hour of the day at school. So awful. It's just awful, right? And I mean, I remember in grade 1, I got a D for handwriting. Right? That has stayed with me for a very long time. And because of that, because I tried so hard, but I just had, I mean, you're like 5 or 6 years old. I just had like coordination problems with holding the pen and writing neatly. Yeah. Right. So it just kind of all looked a bit messy. But of course, what that led to was that very quickly, I just gave up. I was like, what's the point? I can't please this teacher anyway. So what's the point? So I might as well have messy handwriting and like get bad marks for it, and so be it.
That's absolutely true. And that's exactly my story is too. I have poor motor functions. And so my handwriting was always terrible. And I would go to resource room, which is just like an extra time to like practice and stuff like that. And then it just became, why am I working at this? Why? Though I will say my 6th grade teacher found out that if I got full straight A's, my dad would allow me to have a TV in my room. And I had every other A except for that. And he did allow me, he gave me the A just for effort, which was really nice of him. And so maybe my learned response is that I'm just going to be able to skate through life.
Yes, exactly. That's great. It's great. And honestly, I don't actually think that we can avoid in, like, I always get these panic parents. They're just kind of going, oh my God, I'm going to mess my kids up. If you don't mess your kids up, somebody else will. Don't worry about it. We all got to learn certain things, right? And I think the other thing that is really important with the fear of failure is that very often we attach our sense of self-worth and our identity to our successes. Yeah. And that is very thin ice to be on. right?
That's so true. It's like, look at how many trophies I have. Look at how many Instagram followers I have. It's just, life has become this collection of trophies and artifacts and stuff like that. This is the job that I have. This is the house. On and on and on, right? My goodness.
Exactly. It just goes on and on and on. So people have kind of like, I always liken it to, there's the person, and then they have like an achievement box.
Mm-hmm.
And in that achievement box might be, I don't know, having a book published, having that many Insta followers, winning the trophy, winning the championship, winning a gold medal at the Olympic Games, or having this house, driving this car, having the perfect family and 2.3 kids, earning that amount of money, So then they attach their sense of self-worth to how close they are to getting those things that are in this achievement box. And as long as they still feel like I can still get there, I'm not worthless yet, so I can keep going, right? So then they still have that sense of self-worth because they can still get there. But if something happens, I don't know, global financial crisis, COVID lockdowns, blah, 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 and that stuff just kind of all falls away, all of a sudden that person, due to no fault of themselves, can't get there anymore, but they feel completely worthless, useless, and all of that. And that is a really, really dangerous position to be in.
Oh yeah, I've definitely when I was freelancing, a job that was making up, let's say 60% of my income, moved the job out of the city I was in and leaving me with 30 to 40%. And I fell into a pit of depression. I mean, I've always tried to maintain like a distance between Pat and work. It is difficult at times, but I'm aware of that balance. But even then, I mean, that's just such a low, my goodness, just, it just hurts. There's so much pressure and bills start piling up and.
And that's enough to deal with. If you don't have your sense of self-worth attached to it. But of course, we are all kind of like raised in that because of course, you know, at the athletics championships in school or whatever, at sports day, you've got to come first. Or at least you got to come above the first three or whatever, right?
Or you got to not be good and then you got to be funny or something, right?
Exactly.
you have to then, make jokes about it.
That's right. And then people kind of also try to make it better for the kid by kind of going, don't worry about it. You're not good at that, but you're good at this. So now my self-worth gets attached to having to be funny or whatever.
Right.
But if I'm just not having a funny day because life just happens, then my self-worth falls through the floor. But of course, then, and that is also where the fear of failure comes in, because a lot of people, they kind of think it's like, okay, I can still get there. So I don't want to jeopardize my sense of still being able to get to whatever I've put in my achievement box. But if I do the wrong move and then my achievement box slips away, then I feel worthless. So that's where the fear of failure kind of comes into that.
Oh my gosh. And it's when that's exactly that. Extremely accurate. My reaction of like disgust was like, when you're here, that's what we do every day, but when you hear it put like that, it's just like, well, why?
Exactly. Why? Right? Because usually, actually, when you think about it, this achievement box you haven't actually made that yourself, the stuff that is in there. That has usually been given by the previous generation, hopes, dreams, desires of parents, and of course, pressures of society and stuff, expectations. So, and then we of course try to conform, because as children, we just kind of know that when we are in alignment with what society and parents expect, we have an easier ride. Things kind of get different if we try and get difficult when we go against the grain.
Very true.
So, but of course, then there's that thing with this, okay, people want to get closer to their achievement box. And then I think the realization that actually needs to happen is this. If your best friend had absolutely no money, would your best friend be worthless to you?
Not in the slightest. That's not what you wanted from them. Yeah.
Exactly. If your best friend was depressed and didn't have a job, would that friend then be worthless to you?
No, in fact, you'd feel for them. You'd
feel for them.
you empathize with them.
Yeah. And if your best friend's marriage went south or they were homeless, would they then be worthless to you?
No, I think the only time that they would be worthless is if like they were a murderer or sought to hurt other people. But if they just, even if they committed I was going to say committed adultery, but this isn't a Bible chat, so I'll just say they slept outside of their marriage. I'm not Moses. I still, I people make mistakes, and I wouldn't stop being friends with them.
So how come those same rules don't apply to you?
I know, right? I mean,
right?
My reaction is because I've got to go with the herd, right? I've got to not disturb the herd.
Right. And I always find it so fascinating that we can be so forgiving and have so much empathy for other people, but on ourselves, we're just incredibly harsh.
Yeah.
And once we kind of realize that in actual fact, our friend's self-worth does not depend on their achievements.
Right.
Our friend's self-worth is just a given. They got worth. Yeah. So then, of course, once we can start applying that to ourselves and realize that in actual fact, we do have worth, and that we can still want all of those things. Yeah, of course, want business success, want but realize that your self-worth is not on the line, that your self-worth actually is a given. And then you can start to enjoy the journey a lot more. You can actually kind of go, okay, I want that goal and still be driven, but you actually then realize that you're not on the line personally. You want those things and it sets you free. I work so much with business people and with athletes. And when they come to me, they're usually burned out, exhausted, tired, hate that training, but they still have to do it because who am I going to be without that thing, without this success, without this achievement? And then once they understand that there is a different way of doing it, that their self-worth actually is a given, then they become free. And all of a sudden, through that, they start to also get rid of that fear of failure. Because then they go, yeah, of course, failing is normal. I failed a gazillion times as a kid when I was trying to learn to walk. It's normal. It's what we do. That old saying is like, what's an expert? Well, an expert is somebody who's made every single mistake that there is to make. That's how they became the expert.
That's very true. Yeah.
Can we talk? I know you've got a lot on your plate. You've got work, you've got friends, you've got family, pets, you've got the people that you make small talk with at the coffee shop or gym. You've got that bird that you see when you wake up every morning outside your window that you've projected things onto. Look at that bird. Doesn't even love its family. It's always by itself. You do that. Everyone does that. Point is, you've got a lot on your plate. Well, that's why there's Instacart, to take a little bit off your plate. Using Instacart, you search for all your favorite foods and things that you need from the grocery store, all online, all while you're looking at that bird, wondering why it hasn't called its mom. And they deliver it to you. They go to the store and do the shopping for you. And they can deliver it in as fast as an hour. And you can sign up by clicking the link in the description, wherever you're listening or watching. And that's a great way of supporting the show. So it's a great way of supporting this show. It's a great way to make your life a little bit easier, because we all know that you have so much going on, like wondering whether that bird judges you back.
It makes me think about, I mean, not to bring it back to myself, but I've always done things outside of work. And so one of the reasons why I started these podcasts is because at times, like, work doesn't always go your way, and there's just things you have to do. And this is like a spot to do the things I want to do and still have a creative outlook. I was debating as you were saying that, whether it was like a fear of failure turned outwards to be like, look, I can't do it, right? Or just something that I enjoy creatively. And I think it is a mix of both.
And I think it's really, I think it's really important to have other things than just that one thing.
Yeah.
So for example, when I've got an athlete and all they got is wanting to win the gold medal or wanting to win the trophy or whatever, it is dangerous, because that really is that slippery slope. But when they've got other stuff in life, when they've got, I don't know, nephews, nieces, friends,
A book club.
they enjoy
Yeah,
whatever,
like,
book club,
yeah.
climbing a mountain, whatever, who cares? Then there is, then they also get that sense of confidence of achieving something from other areas in their lives.
That's true. Yeah. And then like if they have a stomach bug on the day of the big race, it's not like I'm completely worthless and undeserving of love.
Yes.
Even though that's never the case. Right. Yeah. Well, how does the process of sort of unraveling this fear of failure begin? How do you start to take the stakes and your self-worth tied up into the thing?
So I usually start actually by just asking my clients, what do they want? How do they want to be instead? Because without having an idea on how things could be different, the brain doesn't really want to move. First, we need to actually get an idea how things will be better once I have made the change.
Got it. And
then there needs to be emotional connection to that, so that it becomes something that is of personally important to them. Because if I can do that, then I could actually move forward. And when I can move forward, then I don't know, I'd be happier, or I kind of come home every day and I feel like I've done something, I've achieved something, and then I look forward to going to work again in the morning, and So now there's emotional attachment to it. And when I come home, then I don't know, my family, and I feel like I've done something and I'm happier, my family will be happier, and so on and so forth. Now we've got emotional connection to it.
That's great. Do people ever, I was thinking about just like the person who was like, I've designed my business card, every day for the past 3 months. Is there ever, or maybe how often do you have to like pull it out of the person, or do people know what they want when they come to you? Like, how often do you have to really ask them for it?
That's a great question. Oftentimes they have a bit of an idea.
Okay.
But it's vague and it's very generalized. It usually goes into things as like, I'll be happier, I'll have more success. But they haven't really gotten into the nitty-gritty detail of what that actually looks like on a day-to-day basis, what they would be saying to themselves on the inside of their head instead of what they're saying now, and what that actually feels like. So the person might kind of say, okay, so when I think about doing something, whatever, task X for my business, I get this really tight feeling in my chest. And I might say to myself, oh my God, you can't do this. Or what if this goes wrong? Or, oh my God, you might fail at this, And I go, okay, great. Instead of feeling tight in your chest and getting shaky and saying those things, how do you want to feel in your chest? And they go, and think about that. Yeah. And then, okay, great. And instead of saying that, what would you like to be saying to yourself? And then if we were to create a movie out of this, what scenes, what would be seeing that let you know that you're moving forward, that you're actually doing the things? And then I go, oh, okay, I might actually kind of go in, I might do da. And then through doing this, really, the first thing we're starting to do is to create a new possibility, new options for the brain to kind of get excited about.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I mean, and you as the person assisting them, you now have your roadmap, right? To be like, you're here and this is where we got to get you. And that's great to have that answer right away.
Yeah. And, the funny thing is I always ask people, what do you want? And 90% of the time, they always tell me what they don't want. I don't want to get stuck in my business cards. I don't want this. I don't want that. I go, yeah, I get that. But what do you want? So we really got to get the brain away from what they don't want, because there's this, we call it the law of reversed effect, which just means that when I say to you, no matter what you do, just don't think about red balloons. Just don't think about red balloons floating through the sky.
Immediately popped in my head.
Immediately. You cannot not think about it, right?
And then Luftballon, no, and Sig Luftballons popped into my head too.
That's great. You got the soundtrack with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and of course people can't get it, but then I say, okay, so what do you want? Say, well, I don't want to be anxious. I don't want to get shaky. I don't want to get stuck in my business cards anymore. I don't want I go, yeah, I get that. But what do you want? And sometimes it's like, man, it's difficult for the brain to actually think about something different, because the brain loves familiarity, and it's been so used to running down that old neurological pathway. So that now we need to start creating new neurological pathways by actually thinking about, what do you want? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that sound like?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I wanted to clarify that for my next question, which is, when do you think when does a fear of failure rise to the point that someone should seek help? And as a two-parter, double-decker question, what do you think they need to, like, what level do they need to be able to express to you how they feel? It seems as though you're able to get it out of them, but more importantly, what level of anxiety or fear of failure rises to the point that someone should seek help?
I would always say as soon as possible, because it tends to get worse and not better. And I think it is the level when a person kind of starts to either recognize that I always get this uncomfortable feeling, whatever that may be on the inside, or that they are finding themselves getting stuck, not moving forward. That also is always a good indicator. Or some people have got that level of self-awareness where they go, aha, whenever that happens, then I get stuck, or I feel this, or I have these thoughts, that they kind of have got like this pattern recognition. That is also always a good indicator. So pretty much everybody, and sometimes, of course, why people are not moving forward, it could also be time constraints, that they just don't have the time because they got 5 kids and
Right.
But there is a differentiation, which is, am I what I call busy? Because I'm just creating so much busyness that I actually can't move forward. So that could be a fear of failure again, because they're just creating the busyness so that they can't do what they wanted to do. The second part of your question was, how much does a person need to know? They just need to, pretty much by the time people come to me, they're usually just fed up with something. They're just fed up with themselves. And we don't actually need any more self-awareness than that, because we get the rest out of them.
Right. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's really comforting to know that it's just sort of like, if you're identifying this, I keep holding my hands over my chest because that's where like a lot of this anxiety lives, right? Just like feels this tightness. But recognizing, if that, then Silke, right? If that, then you go see somebody. Yeah.
Yes.
And
exactly.
and you'll help them do the rest.
Yes, absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
very comforting.
One of life's mysteries is that birthdays always find me unprepared, catch me unprepared. I don't go on Facebook as much, so I don't notice them as much. But I want to express my love and appreciation for friends and family. That wasn't part of the copy, I'm just saying it. Year after year, month after month. Even when I see it coming, I'm not ready. Am I a jerk? Yes and no. Why do things have to be so black and white for you? But I've got great news, friends. Introducing monthly card subscriptions from the Cardist Studio. Join the service that delivers the card and the stamp that you'll need to your door. No more errands. Who wants more errands? I don't know why, but I'm starting to think of errands as a kid's name. Errands, go back to bed. Okay, but here's how it works. You choose your categories, from birthdays and celebrations to love and encouragement, or select their full collections and have those thank you notes and just because cards at the ready. Those ones are always so nice. Like when you get a card for doing something and it's just like a small little heads up or token of appreciation, it genuinely makes you feel really good. And best of all, you would never get caught cardless again. Let me repeat, you'll never get caught cardless again. Try to say that a bunch of times in a row. You'll never get caught cardless again. Monthly card subscriptions from as little as $8 per month for the card and the stamp. Delivered to you. TheCardistStudio.com shop subscriptions. And you can use the promo code AnxietyPod for 15% off your originating order.
I'm curious how hypnotherapy makes its way into all of this. Is this something that you do with all your anxiety patients, or is it like a special instance where you will use that as a treatment?
Yeah, so my business is the Australian Hypnotherapy Centre, and I use always a combination of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is also a great way of working with unconscious processes. And hypnotherapy also is a great way of working with unconscious processes, because all of this stuff, as you just said, is the person is not necessarily consciously aware of it.
Yeah.
They just kind of get that feeling in the chest, and everything else is underneath that conscious awareness. It's actually stuff in the unconscious. So by asking the questions that I ask, we bring things out of unconscious awareness a little bit more into conscious awareness. Mm. And because all of those things, hypnotherapy is a wonderful tool. Both hypnotherapy and NLP are great tools of working with the unconscious processes. And because all of those things are actually a problem that exists at the level of the unconscious. Mm-hmm. So many people, they're going to go, yeah, I know what I should be doing. I know, I just need to get on with it. And I just need to do it, like consciously, rationally. They know exactly what they need to do, but they still can't do it because their unconscious is trying to protect them, really, from something that the unconscious a long, long time ago has interpreted to be a threat to them. Yeah. And now the unconscious job is just to keep them safe. The unconscious job is just to keep you safe, to protect you. And the unconscious goes, no. This situation is very similar to that one way back when. Yeah. And no, we ain't doing that. No, I do everything to stop you from going there. So then that's where hypnotherapy comes in so useful, to help the unconscious reinterpret those events and kind of go, oh, actually, it wasn't inherently in the sandpit. It wasn't red people in red t-shirts. It was just that there was some kid who just didn't have manners. Right. Yeah. I also love that when you're personifying the subconscious, like your full Australian accent comes out whenever you're talking as that. It's so funny. I do the same thing with the New York accent. Hey, come on, take it easy. That's true, isn't it? That's great. Well, geez, I had another question and then I started laughing about your Australian. No. That was very funny. A lot of times people feel stuck. I've remembered it when a task can feel daunting, right? This big, dark mass in front of them that they're nervous about taking on, right? Whether it's, and it's causing their fear of failure. How do you recommend people move forward? Is it finding ways to just like chip a little bit off of it, break a piece off of it, boom, and then move about it that way? Yeah. So one way is definitely to break it down. So one way people can get stuck is because they just kind of want to get too much done too fast, too soon, instead of just kind of breaking it down into manageable steps. Or it could also be that when they have got this big, huge, dark mass in front of them, they actually don't see what's behind it. Mm-hmm. They actually don't see that there will be something that looks lighter and brighter and happier and shinier behind that thing. Mm-hmm. So then we and that's really by asking the questions that I ask first, we're actually making the thing behind that big, dark thing that's right in front of me, we're making that one behind it a lot brighter and a lot more colorful and a lot bigger, so that the person kind of goes, oh yeah, here's that dark thing, but behind it there is that. Maybe it's actually worthwhile going there.
That's incredible. That's also an amazing reminder for me, as my fiance Jamie and I are starting to plan our wedding. Where this big mass of planning a wedding is to remember that there's this bright, shiny thing in the shape of a wedding at the end.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
And you probably got to create some kind of movie or image or something for yourself where you see Jamie and yourself having a great time with all your family and friends and and then you just kind of go, okay, that's what we want. That's
just
why we're doing
crawl to there. Well, Silke, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think you're very good at what you do, and you're very good at articulating how you approach things. And so it's always nice to have you on my podcast. I'm curious if there's anything you think I'm missing related to a fear of failure and what we can do for ourselves.
Great. So yeah, I think the important thing to remember is that it is a learned response. It's a learned response, and as such, you can unlearn it. The other thing is also to be aware, just kind of go, okay, good. So what am I actually afraid of here? Because it's usually not the failure in and of itself. It is more what my brain has decided it thinks about the consequence of that failure. And because we have got amazingly creative minds, our minds tend to over-exaggerate the consequences massively. Another thing to do would also be to go, okay, great. So let's assume this does go wrong. Then what? Then what's the next thing? Oh, and then quite often people kind of go, oh, actually, I am going to recover from that. Or we become aware of the ridiculousness of the brain. So I had a client recently I was working with online. He was doing the business, and he was just, his brain said, okay, so what if this went wrong, what would happen? He goes, oh, he wanted to get a loan for, I think, about something like $20,000 or something like that. And then he said, okay, but if the business goes wrong, his brain was like, oh, then you can't repay the loan. And if you can't repay the loan, then you're going to lose the house. And then your family and everybody will be homeless. And I'm like, how much equity have you got in the house? And he goes, oh, we own the house. Okay. Is your house worth more than $20,000? And he looks at me and goes, of course. Okay. Right. But his brain gave him pictures of him and his entire family being homeless and living in the streets. Yeah. So of course he wasn't going to move forward.
Right.
But once he kind of realized the ridiculousness of the movies that his brain was giving him, and that was in no way proportionate to what the risk actually was, he was like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, I think I could do that. So it is important to kind of get the brain to think about, okay, what's that? What's the next step? What's the next step? Always remind yourself that, yeah, fear of failure is, honestly, I'm yet to meet a human being who doesn't do fear of failure. Yeah. We all do it. We all do it. Some of us have just learned more tools how to manage it better.
And some people just stuff it down and further than others,
which is scary too.
Yes.
And I think the other thing is always to remember your self-worth is a given. Your self-worth does not depend on the outcome of this thing.
I love that.
You got worth.
I don't think I would ever put a bumper sticker on my car, but your self-worth is a given would be a great candidate.
Yeah. I actually, for years, I had like a business card sized little thing in my wallet that said your self-worth is a given. So which decision would you actually like to make?
That's incredible. Yeah, it's such a great reminder. I mean, if people do affirmations or something like that, I mean, should be at the top of the list, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, how can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you on social media?
They can find a lot of information also on my website, which is australianhypnotherapycentre.com.au. There I have got a lot of information where I write also about how unconscious processes work and about anxiety and how I work with hypnotherapy. And there also is a just short 10-minute recording, which is kind of like a short 10-minute little relaxation hypnosis recording that people can download.
Oh, nice.
And they get more information that way as well.
Incredible. And also people can go check out the episode that we did on Death Space Filling the Void to hear more about how you work with people who are grieving. And if they are grieving, that's a great way to work with you as well. A lot of information there. And you also provided a lot of tools for people that are in the episode download or description rather, so people can click it and find it there. So a lot of great ways to work with Silke.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much, Pat. This was so fun.
I'm so glad you had fun. Yeah, thanks so much. And we'll stay in touch.
Great. Absolutely. We'll do.
Thank you so much to Silke for coming on and chatting about a fear of failure. I mean, every single person experiences that from time to time, and it can get away from you, so to speak, right? It can build, and that anxiety can sort of take over your life. And so it's good to be mindful of it and mindful of what you can do to help yourself. Yeah, definitely check out Silke's work, and you can reach out to her as someone that can help you directly if that's something you're interested in. Okay, before getting the weird thing causing me anxiety this week, I just want to remind you of my other podcast called Death Space Filling the Void. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts. If you're liking the show and want to leave a tip, you can do that through the Buy Me a Coffee link. It's in the description wherever you're listening. Same with the link for Pure Spectrum, the CBD company I've been working with and trying out their products for myself, and I've really been loving it. So yeah, make sure you use the promo code AnxietyPod, one word, and that'll get you 15% off all your orders, all of them. Then there's the Instacart link, which you can also sign up in the description. By signing up that way, you're telling Instacart that this show sent you, which also helps support the show. And then there's the Cardist, who's offering the promo code AnxietyPod for 15% off your initial. So thank you to all the sponsors. Definitely support them. Helps this show. So okay, weird thing causing me anxiety this week. Dry January. Doing it. Took last year off because we were trying to figure out where we were going to live and buying a house, and it was stressful. And also you're just out a lot. These are excuses. I'll call them what they are. But it was just a stressful time, and just being in bars after seeing or restaurants after seeing a place, you're just stressed and you just want to hang out for a second. And again, that's an excuse. I could have had a Sprite. But yeah, doing it. I think 2 years ago, before we moved from Brooklyn to South Carolina, I did dry January, February, and March. The longest I've ever gone. Felt great. But yeah, there's a little bit of anxiety, like, oh, you can't do it, and what does that say about you if you're unable to go 1 month? Just beating myself up. Yeah, because there's always a reason, right? There's always a reason to stop dry January or to have a drink when you don't really want one. I'm going to stay strong. And good luck to everyone that's also doing dry January. Well, as always, thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you on Thursday.